What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Patrick here, and moving on to the next example. So you start a business with two of your friends. You invest $5,000, one of your friends invests $7,000, and then your other friend, the third friend, invests an amount that gives them 40% of the business. How much of the profit will each of you receive if the business either has a profit of $30,000 or a second scenario where the business has revenue and costs of $60,000 and $35,000 respectively? So first thing we want to figure out is what percentage of the business does you and your friends each individually own. So let's do a chart here. We'll let this first column be you. We'll say the second column is going to be friend A. We'll call them friend A, and then we'll call the other friend B. Right? So you and two of your friends. So the amount invested, the dollar amount invested in the business, is going to determine how much each of the business you all own. So you invest $5,000. Your second friend invests $7,000, and then we're not told the dollar amount that your third friend invests in. We're just told the percentage of the business that they're going to get. So let's call this X over here. And then let's make another row here for the percentage invested. And the percentage invested is also going to be the percentage of the business that is owned. So notice that for the third friend, we're told the percentage. Okay, but we're not told what your respective percentage is and your second friend's respective percentages. We're just told the dollar amounts. However, with this information here, notice that the total between you and friend A in terms of the percentage invested is going to be 60%. And so notice that if we know that this total here, which is 12,000, that's going to represent 60% of the total investment. And this chart is just a nice visual way to see that, right? Because if friend B invests an X amount that gave them 40%, one more time, then that means that you and friend A own 60% of the business, which means that your total invested, which is 12,000 between you two, represents 60% of the total investment. So we can make like a total column here as well. And so what we can do is we can actually find out what this total here is going to be, because 12,000 is 60% of that. So if we let the total, let's maybe introduce another variable here, Y. So basically the total amount invested in dollars times 60% of that, so times 0.6, has to be the 12,000. And so isolating for that Y, divide both sides by 0.6, and you'd end up with 20,000. Okay, so this here ends up being, the total invested ends up being 20,000. And notice now that since we have the total invested, we have these two investments, then what's the difference here? What's remaining? 20,000 minus 5,000 minus 7,000 would be 20,000 minus 12,000, which would give us 8,000. And notice that that makes sense as well, because if we take 40% of 20,000, that's going to give us 8,000. So notice how that checks out as well. So you could do these little checks on the way with questions like this. And now, instead of totaling up the percentage of you and friend A, you can actually get these individual percentages by taking 5,000, dividing it by 20,000. That would give you 0.25 multiplied by 100. That would give you 25%. Sorry, not dollar terms, 25%. So you own 25% of the business. And then to get this last amount, different ways we can do it. We know that it has to total 100, so 100 minus 25 minus 40 would give us 35%. We could have also took 7,000 divided by 20,000, which would give us 0.35 multiplied by 100. Another way to get that 35%. Another way you could have done this is you could have got these amounts right away directly before getting the 20,000 and the 100%. So what we could have done is we know that the 12,000 represented 60% of the business. And so what we could have done is just figured out the proportions of that 12,000 between you and friend A. So we could have done 5,000 over 12,000. That's how much you would own of the 12,000, not of the business, of the 12,000, and then you would just multiply that by 60%, and that would give you 25%. So we could have got this directly. It's just a little less intuitive and a little tougher to explain, but it is a quicker way to get that percentage directly. And we could have also done 7,000 of the 12,000, so that's how much friend A owns of the 12,000. 7,000 of that 12,000, and remember the 12,000 represents 60% of the business, and so we could have got that 35% like that as well. But again, it's just not as intuitive of a way. I rather show how to get the total value of the investment and then get those percentages after. Right? So whichever way you do it, basically these are the percentage breakdowns here. And then once you have these percentage breakdowns, you can figure out how much each of you is going to share in the profit of 30,000. So if there's a profit of 30,000, well, you're going to get 25% of that. 25% of 30,000 would be 7,500. Right? And then 35% of 30,000 would be 11,500. And then 40% of 30,000 would be 12,000. That's how much friend B would get. Right? So those are the breakdowns. And notice that if you total them up, it would equal that $30,000 profit. So that's actually the answer to number one. Then number two, what if there's revenues of 60,000 and then costs of 35,000? Well, notice then we have to do a preliminary step in figuring out what the profit is, which is just revenue minus cost. And then when you do that here, the profit would be 25,000. And then you just follow the exact same process. Right? So what is 25% of 25,000? Well, that's just going to be 6,250. Right? And you just keep multiplying the percentages like that. And then what is 35% going to be of 25,000? Well, that's just going to be 8,750. And then 40% of 25,000 is going to be 10,000. Right? And then finally, to check your answer, you can add all of these up. So notice 6,250 plus 8,750. What would that give us? That would give us 15,000 plus the 10,000 would give us that 25,000, right? So this here would be the breakdown. That's how much you would get, how much friend A would get, how much friend B would get if the company had revenues and costs of 60,000 and 35,000 respectively.